Welcome to this week's Learning Space with Captain Chuck.
Yes,
Apparently,
Captain Chuck.
I officially got the story of Chuck. So Chuck is actually a My Moon mascot. So that's a JPL outreach project about lunar science. And it's actually one of the guys who works there, who you and I both know, who has a Chuck costume.
Yeah, I was gonna say
It's
much larger than our Chuck, right?
Yes, but it actually started as whoever was developing the website just happened to put a squirrel as an icon. They thought it was funny, and they kind of ran away with it. So, yeah, and that's why we have our own little Captain Chuck in solidarity with the My Moon people. But also, yes, this is Learning Space. I'm a little bit rambly today. I'm Nicole Gugliucci. I am postdoc with CosmoQuest. We are in the throes of prepping for our 24-hour Hangout-a-thon that is happening this weekend, starting at 11 a.m. Central. And with me is Georgia Bracey.
Hello.
So Georgia Bracey is in charge of CosmoQuest education. And I have Chuck here with me today because he and I were in Indianapolis last week. And we were at the American Astronomical Society meeting. It was one of the smaller meetings. Usually the spring meetings are a bit smaller. But it was a fairly short drive for us. In fact, I have a picture of Chuck. Oh, I don't have it open.
Is he driving?
Well, no, but I
don't know if he's old enough.
I have trouble seeing over the steering wheel. He's far shorter than I am.
Put a cushion under him. He'll be just fine.
Just get a few. Do they even make phone books anymore?
I think unfortunately they do. I think they still do. But
they still do. Just a lot of phone books. We drove the 3 hours to, let me see if I can screen share this, to
road
Indianapolis
trip.
For a little road trip. So This is actually Captain Chuck.
And who else?
This is Plushy Will Wheaton. They were strapped into the passenger seat of my car.
I'm sure they got along just fine together.
They did. They really did. They're good traveling buddies.
Kind of bonded. Yeah.
So we went to AAS222. If you're looking at all these hashtags and wondering what the heck that was about, that was coming from that conference. A whole bunch of science news stories that I'm sure you've been keeping up on. Lots of Kepler news. Lots of news coming out of ALMA, the Atacama Large Millimeter Array. But I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the education results and ideas and presentations and things that were talked about at the meeting. I want to remind you guys watching, first of all, if you can share this, that would be great. I failed to invite all the people I usually invite, so if you can share that link out, that would be cool. And you can comment along with us as well. If you're watching on YouTube, you can comment there. If you're watching on Google Plus, on the event page, we're picking those up. And anywhere else on Google Plus this is posted, I should have captured as well. If you use the hashtag LearningSpace on Twitter, we are following that too. So maybe we should just... All of the things.
All those places.
So maybe we should just jump right into it.
Hey, you didn't see a life-size Will Wheaton walking around.
Wish, that would be awesome. No, I did not, sadly.
Okay.
I have seen a life-size Will Wheaton walking around Dragon Con, though. But sadly not.
That would be the place, yeah.
Not at a AAS meeting. So.
Well, maybe in the future.
Nor was there a large squirrel, just the little guy.
Okay. Aw.
Yeah. So there was a bunch of, actually there was one of the big education sessions was on Monday, so the first day of the conference, and it was called Astronomy Education, Where Are We Now and Where Are We Going? And so there were a series of 15-minute talks, which is much longer than the usual 5 minutes that people get at a AAS meeting, which was kind of nice, actually, to give people a little bit more time to flesh out their ideas. So first there was a talk by Ed Prather of the Center for Astronomy Education. I've taken one of their workshops before I was actually teaching astronomy in college, and so that helped me out quite a bit. It's especially useful if you're teaching large lectures. They give you some really great ideas on how to get participation from your students, even when you're teaching in like a theater.
Yep, make it more interactive.
Yeah.
And student-centered, yes, even in the huge group.
Yeah. And this, and since the question was where we're going from here, that group in particular has done a lot of research into how you can change the Astronomy 101 classroom, because for a lot of people, and this may be true for some of you guys watching, that was the last formal science education that a lot of people get. You know, you get to college, you got to take 1 or 2 science courses if you're not a science major, and people tend towards astronomy because it's cool. And so we, so that is a way for us as educators to do public outreach on a broad scale before these people go on to become politicians or lawyers or, you know, something not sciencey, but something somewhere
Making
else in
big
society.
decisions about how things are run and what happens in your world. So it's actually it's kind of a scary thing when you think about it, and it makes you realize how important those intro and general courses are, because it's all the citizens out there. You know, it may be their only chance to not only see some of the new content and discoveries in science, but kind of get a feel for how it works. So if you're letting them in on, you know, the processes of science, how science is done, that could be the only time they see that. So it's really important.
Yeah, yeah. One of the issues in particular he talked about, as far as where can we go from this, is tying science and society and tying attitudes about science into that educational research as well, seeing how science is important to real world problems, right? So astronomy may generally deal with things that are big and far away, but like you said, the concepts and practices that you learn in that class are going to extend to your thinking of things like global climate change or even economic difficulties that we're having. It's all numbers, it's math. So that's one kind of important place that can go as well.
Yeah.
And we also brought up the question. This is something we've dabbled a little bit with online classes at CosmoQuest, but there's a big push in general towards online learning, and also these huge, the MOOCs, right? Massively online, open online course.
Massive, yes. massive open online course.
Am I getting that right? MOOC, M-O-O-C. I can't remember.
M-O-O-C.
Yes. So that's a whole new field, and we're not sure what the best practices are for that either. And that's something I hear from people who've taken those classes. They like building. They have little coffee shop communities that get together and talk about the lectures. I mean, you still want a face-to-face component with that as well. So
yeah, well, you're right. Those are new and exciting, and it's still sort of up for grabs as to how effective they are and how much learning goes on, and how easy or difficult it is for people to access them, because that's the big deal with them is that supposedly people who are far away from universities or can't afford to go to universities can still get a university quality course in whatever is available, and there's still a lot of debate about that, but they are really exciting, and there's a lot of opportunity out there. But as you mentioned, the big thing is still to make it interactive. So even, they think that, the most effective learning still happens even in those huge courses when people do get together and, have a discussion, however it happens on the MOOC, in a discussion forum or a wiki, or, even, some of them still have some face-to-face parts to them, so they're not totally online. So that's still really important. But that's, that's new and exciting, but, not a lot of research, I'm sure, yet at all on it. So it's wide open.
Wide open spaces. So move on to the next topic, and there was a topic touched on by 2 speakers. So Mary Kay Hemingway, who's been in the astronomy education field, has incredible experience in teacher professional development, and Randy Ludwig as well. So they were doing a lot of hands-on inquiry-based astronomy teacher professional development, something we know a little bit about. Yeah. We're also in the throes of planning. And talking about the professional development going on for K through 12 teachers. And Mary Kay in particular provided an interesting statistic that 15% of high school teachers have had an astronomy class. I don't remember where this came from, but this is the rough number that they were quoting, is that only 15% of astronomy high school teachers have ever had an astronomy class of some sort before. I know I never had one in high school, but this is including their college education as well. And Am I still showing up here? My screen just went blank.
Oh, I see you.
Okay, well, what?
Still there.
Okay. We tech. Um, and in something in particular, I've looked at looking at the next gen science standards, right? So the 26 or so states in the U.S. that have adopted these. There's quite a bit of astronomy being included as a content area. You have to know what the Big Bang is and be able to teach that, and how we know that that's the prevailing model. So the question is, of course, how do we get in-service teachers to look at these, to learn these things as well. And I know you are actually in the middle of planning 2 professional development workshops right now.
Yay.
You can comment
Yes.
on that.
Well, it is interesting. So some of the disciplinary, let me start again. So there's 3 basic parts to the new standards, and one is the disciplinary core ideas. And there's 4 of them, and one of them is Earth and space science. So yeah, the Earth, not only Earth science, but space science and astronomy is kind of highlighted there, which is really nice. But as you say, not everybody has had courses in that, and even earth science, that's something that often gets overlooked as well. So it's kind of interesting that those 2 are together. Not always, courses that teachers take. Sometimes, but not always with the high school.
It's always been like biology,
high school has
chemistry,
their
physics.
own content areas that
Yeah.
they kind of like. You get the biology folks, you get the chemistry folks, maybe the physics people. But not so often the earth science and the and astronomy. So that is a nice emphasis with the new standards. There's other things that are brand new, or at least haven't been highlighted before, like engineering and just the general idea of connecting everything. So that's something we're working on with the teachers that we're going to see in the next couple of weeks, is not only the new content areas that they might not be familiar with, but just this new idea that things have to be connected. Things, all the sciences don't work in isolation. There's astrobiology, there's all different kinds of engineering. So it's very interconnected, and that's kind of a new idea, because a lot of times, people say, I'm a biology teacher, I'm a physics teacher, and that's what I do, that's what I studied. But now it's more important to really try to bring it all together. So there's a lot of professional development just, because of the standards, a lot that needs to be done. So, but yeah, astronomy is, of course, such an engaging subject that's a nice place to start.
Yeah. So that's something we're working on. You're planning the 2-week professional development session in East St. Louis. It's happening the next 2 weeks.
Yep.
And so we've got a host of scientists doing that. And I know some of the things that they talked about in the talks are things that we're doing, putting in these inquiry and engineering practices. I mean, inquiry is kind of, as I understand it, like an older version, fits more in the older standards, but it's just the terminology that's been
around.
used.
Oops, it's been around for a while, as I knock things off my desk, sorry. And there's different varieties, I think you could say, of inquiry. So you kind of have to decide, are you doing more guided inquiry? Are you doing true inquiry? How teacher or student-centered is it? So there's like a whole spectrum of inquiry, but that in itself has been around for a while. Engineering, of course, has been around, but not always something that teachers have done with their students in the classroom. So it's taken on a new role here, a new level with the new standards. So the idea of having an engineering design process is new for most teachers. So there's inquiry where you have students really taking the lead, ideally in looking for questions to answer and designing some sort of investigation to answer those questions. But engineering is more of, looking at a problem and thinking about ways to solve that problem. So with designing a product, perhaps, or something else, improving a product. And it's an iterative cycle that you go through over and over again as you make improvements and modifications to optimize your solution to this problem. It's very close and really overlaps a lot with the scientific method or science practices, but a little different focus. So that's something we'll be going over with the teachers and having them explore as they do activities in the next 2 weeks.
And I'm
For
sure
that
we'll learn a
professional
lot from
development.
doing that and from the evaluations and the things that we have them do. So I'm looking forward to that because I know they get to work on their own projects, and that's something we get to help them with.
Yep, I know. It's fun because it's hands-on, it's interactive. You get to do projects. It's really great.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Sandlin Buxner, who we're actually working with on some of the evaluation stuff, also gave a talk talking more about NGSS and its effects on the professional development process. And the big thing is we have to retrain all the in-service teachers who maybe aren't so comfortable with these concepts, as you were saying, or it's new to them. Again, engineering is something that until this point has been overlooked in science education. So them being taught the way they were taught under older standards haven't had that. And so
Right,
something
right.
that others need to provide. Um,
Yeah, in a sense, the new standards, they're not all that different. I mean, in my opinion, from the old ones that were there, but they're arranged a little differently.
mhm,
Things are highlighted and emphasized a little differently. So you have cross-cutting concepts now, which are, for example, looking for patterns, using models, things like that. And those you could find those in the older standards, but they weren't as prominent. So
mhm,
you had to
mhm.
maybe dig a little deeper to find them. And people just tend to focus more on content, and teachers, I think, are more
Yeah.
comfortable with just, I'm teaching this content in my class, and
Yes.
the processes and these patterns and other, concepts are a little more difficult sometimes to get your hands on in
Yeah.
the classroom. So there's a different emphasis, and I think that's really good, actually.
Mhm.
It's a good emphasis for the new standards.
Yeah, when I was teaching an astrobiology course, I was really comfortable coming up with activities for the astro part, not as much for the bio part. And I told my students straight up, I don't, last biology class I took was in high school, so I took AP Bio and that was it. So that's where we're going from.
Yeah, and
um,
and it's hard. And teachers, I think, part of what we have to do is again, make sure that teachers are kind of comfortable going
mhm.
outside their own comfort zone. So here, they've always taught physics, and now they have to bring in, biology, hopefully, and earth science, and those are new things, and not that it can't be done, but it's another thing to do and something that they haven't had to think about for a while. So just, the idea of this is another new thing
Mhm.
for teachers to do, and they're already very burdened with many things that they have to do.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so just from that standpoint, it's something that's a little difficult, but professional development, yep, is certainly going to be needed and certainly going to play a role in getting the standards into the classroom.
So I have a slightly cheeky question because a friend of mine asked me this. My friend Gail Zazowski is an astronomer, and I was, talking about all these different standards and these standards and those standards and the new standards and this stuff, and she says, "So why are they called standards if there are so many?" And I had to stop and go, "Oh, that's a good question. Is it just that the process of standardizing something as complex as education is led
It's
to
difficult,
proliferation?"
yes, and there's many groups, many organizations that, of
Yeah,
course, have their own take, and with good reason, on what standards should be. So,
yeah.
ideally, there would be one set of
Yeah, that
standards
would be
for
a
everybody.
standard.
Um, yeah, standardize those standards. But that idea in itself rubs
Mhm.
some people the wrong way. So in our
Yeah,
country, we have education being the sort of the realm of the states,
right, right.
and not all the states want to do everything that the other states want to do, and sort of in a sense give up that control. So actually, there's some pushback sometimes from having standards being brought down on you,
Yeah,
top
yeah.
down, because the states have typically had control of education, and of course they don't want to give that up.
Hmm.
So they at least want to have a role in new standards that come along, which again, the new science standards kind of were formed that way, came
Right,
from the
right.
states. So eventually, I mean, if all the states adopt, then, we will have this wonderful set of standards for everybody, but it's going to be up to the states to decide if they want to, come on board or not. And they haven't all said that they want to yet.
Yeah.
So I think, like you mentioned earlier, there's 26 that have not even adopted yet, but 26 states that were involved in the writing and development of standards. I actually think there's only 2 states so far that have adopted officially. Rhode Island.
Are we one of them?
No.
Okay.
Not yet. Rhode Island was the first.
Go Rhode Island.
And I just saw, just like an
hour
ago somewhere, I want to say Kansas has adopted.
Hey.
And I don't know if somebody in between those 2 did or not. So we may have 2. Maybe somebody knows and can chime in.
Well, now that they're written, right, you have to adopt them, and then you have to build a curriculum,
so that's a whole
and then you have to
process.
figure out how to evaluate it.
Yeah, and then, the assessment will be a whole other big thing, and that's what everybody's, I think, kind of worried and waiting for. So
yeah, well, and what I hear from parents who are scientists but not teachers, they get really ruffled at the idea of standards because it is connected to the idea of multiple choice tests, right? And that's the thing we all blame for having ruined science education, right? Is multiple choice tests. Yeah. So I think there needs to be buy-in from parents and from scientists who are parents and parents who are sciencey, that these new standards are trying to not do that.
No, they really are not meant for that. They're not even meant to be a curriculum. So when you look at the standards, there's all these things that we hope all children will eventually learn, but it's not saying that this is actually what has to be taught or how it has to be taught in the classroom. So, but people are going to think of it that way, I think, no matter what, because it's kind of easy to do that. Mm-hmm. And it shouldn't be, driving a multiple choice test, but that seems to be how it goes. So that's an issue that we have to get around somehow, someday, and I don't have the answer for that one, unfortunately.
What are you talking about? We have all the answers. We're gonna make it all work.
I have answers, but how to make make them actual reality is a whole other thing.
Yes, actual implementation.
Yeah.
And something that was talked about in general at discussion afterwards, I've got one more talk to mention, but is that there hasn't been a lot of evaluation. There's been some evaluation of informal science learning environments, so like museums, citizen science websites, which is what we're starting on, and some of what I presented, but I will not share with you guys because we're not done collecting data, so you can't see it yet. Sorry. We're still collecting data on the survey, so you can't see our data yet. It'll skew your results. So people who are lifelong learners, or there's another new name I picked up, free choice learning, right? This is people learning outside of school. This is people deciding to do these things on their own, to read blogs, listen to podcasts. You guys right here, you're free choice learners.
Yeah, it is, and that's the key. One of the key things in informal science, so in informal education anywhere, is that you are free to choose. You're free to go do something else, come back. It is free choice.
Yeah, kids don't have a choice.
Yes, so formal education, you're in the classroom, you don't have a whole lot of choice.
Yeah. But studying...
not in the same way that you do in a museum.
But studying what brings people in, what people learn from it, because it's not an environment where you want to be tested.
Right.
That's a whole nother ball of wax. Like, I know some has been done, but it wasn't a main topic of discussion in that particular session, and I personally don't know as much about it, other than what we've started doing. Well,
that's the second key point of informal environments and informal learning, is that there's no assessment. There's no, no formal. So, people may be wanting to study it, and that's a whole other issue, but, you're at the museum, you're looking at the displays, there is no test.
Right.
There's
no comment form, a feedback form, something like that. A survey
that's right. That's your opinion. That's evaluation on, yes, did you like this?
Right.
But you don't have that feeling of, I need to engage with this, display, and it's wonderful, but, there's going to be a test later, so I better try to memorize, or, that stress,
that's more interesting,
that stress is off.
Yeah, but it's more interesting if they're not prepared. I'm gonna scare you guys if they're not prepared for a test at the end and be like, "Hey, what'd you learn?" It's more interesting to find out what people learn when they don't think a test is coming.
Well, that's true. I
don't know
know
if that's moral.
Yeah, we might have some issues there.
To get IRB approval.
But you're right, though. People do want to know what
Mm-hmm.
people are learning from these informal interactions, even though, yeah, there's not supposed to be a test. So
Right.
that is the real trick of, trying to be non-intrusive in a way.
I've
And
seen them in the form
figure
of
out what people are getting out of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen them in the form of feedback forms.
Yep. So yeah, and those are
Sometimes they'll pick a very small sample and chat with them afterwards. So yeah, there's something there. One last major thing I wanted to mention from this session. Denise Smith came and talked about the NASA EPO forum. So NASA having its education and public outreach section. I'm going to add that link in there too, in the comments. A lot of it is some of it's private, some of it is public. It's private in the way that it's where we who are developing NASA education materials actually collaborate. And you're going to see a lot coming out about evaluation of NASA EPO because, as you know, the president's proposed budget would slash a lot of that. And they've collected years of evaluation data saying our programs are doing good stuff. And so they're trying to highlight that a bit more. And it's a really good program. These forums allow the scientists and the educators to get together and come up with the new materials and new ideas. You've been working with the forums longer than I have. I've been in it for like a year now. Finally getting the hang of it.
Not much longer. They were kind of new to me also. Okay. So, I'm still kind of exploring them.
I went to the conference on the second day of this job. So that was really...
We just throw you right in there.
Yeah, there's an astrophysics forum, there's a solar forum, there's a planetary forum.
I
don't know if the other one is...
Heliophysics? Did you say?
No. Oh, it's solar. Yeah, helio. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that makes
sense. Helioplanetary, astrophysics. Those are the three I've had stuff from, and I think
it seems like there should be a fourth one.
And I don't remember because that's like the one that I've never had produced material for, but fail.
Yeah, me too. Okay.
I'm failing on that. Yeah, because we're primarily with planetary now, but this is the community of people. During the AAS, I know the president's budget had to be there was a live webcast where they were in front of Congress defending it. I only got to see part of it, but there are some Congress critters that are very pro NASA, so that is comforting, I think. Yeah, we won't,
that's a good thing.
Yeah. So yay, NASA EPO. Let's see, what else did I do?
So were these, you said they were 15-minute sessions.
These are 15-minute talks all in one session on Monday afternoon.
And then just a Q&A afterwards, or is it basically presentation? And
there was a little bit of Q&A afterwards. They brought everybody up sort of as a panel. Like I said, mostly they talked about a little bit of informal science education. What has that been doing?
Any big concerns that seem to come out of the audience at all, or?
I think there may have been. That's where I got in my head the discussion of a couple of parents, people who were scientists but also parents, concerned that the standards will kill scientific curiosity. I vaguely remember that being a question that came up as well. So like I said, NGSS, you got to have buy-in from the teachers and the parents.
Yeah, and it's more, I guess, it's the testing that has to stop. Standards are guides. This is what we think people should learn. This is what we think people should know by the time they reach this point in their education. But it doesn't mean that we should have huge tests all the time that may or may not be aligned with what's going on in the classroom.
Yeah. No, I remember taking the Regents exams.
That's the thing.
Child of New York State, so I took the Regents exams. Anybody else who's a New Yorker here? It was a state test, and it was our final grade for the class. So it was a double whammy, and it was almost all multiple choice.
And that's another thing. They call them high stakes testing for a reason. So I mean, even if we had those tests, But if they were not tied so heavily to teacher evaluation and even school evaluation, I mean, in a way it makes sense that they might, but there's
Right.
so many other factors involved in the success of a school, success of a student, how good a teacher is. You know, there's just so much more than that. But
Right.
having everything hang on those tests is just a lot of pressure. And it's completely understandable why those tests then become the focus of education for the year for this, you know, classroom. Because, you know, that's what teachers' jobs are hanging on. You know, reputations of schools, principals, superintendents, districts. It's amazing the pressure that they bring. So, you know, in a sense, it's not just the test, it's what we're doing with the tests.
I see. Yeah, yeah.
So
You're not just getting the information on how are things working. You're
right.
using
It's
it
like
to...
it's how you're using it. What are you using it for? Yeah. Not good.
Happier note. So
Yes.
I mentioned NASA forums before. I should also screen share the NASA Wavelength webpage. So this came out a few months ago, but it was brought up again. This is nasawavelength.org. All of the NASA educational products are on one easy site. For a long time, I think they were tied to the mission pages, and so you had to find them on the individual mission pages. Now you can go over, you know, whatever. Okay, look, if you're teaching elementary school, there's like 800 lessons
Right. There's
to
some
choose
nice.
from.
Yep. You can search for lessons. You know, topics. It's really nice. Got a really nice search engine. Lots of
Yeah.
good things in there.
So you
Yep.
can search, so there's a whole bunch of chemistry and earth science. And I know that they also have these strand maps, which I think ties into a lot of the standards as well. So if you
I
want to,
hadn't
if
looked
you
at that
know,
before. Nice.
they talked about this at NSTA
Okay.
when we did a bunch of workshops with teachers, and so they have these huge concept maps that tie to particular. That doesn't have any. That has like 61. I don't remember how it. There you go. Here's all the resources that fit that little bubble.
Wow, that's amazing. And
you can actually get into that individually,
okay.
Which is pretty cool. So, whoops. So that is a cool NASA product to share. NASA Wavelength, good stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, there were some other. There was a poster session as well. So there were some interesting little posters. I don't have any. You know, I don't want to like share pictures of people's photos or anything, of posters or anything. But I did see some pick up some interesting things. One in particular. I do have a picture of here for reference, so I know who did it. This is from Furman University. They did a first-year seminar class of science and science fiction. So of course, I'm like, oh my god! I saw it in passing. I didn't get a chance to look closely, so my friend sent me a picture of it. But like, they read different science fiction books. I think specifically pertaining to Mars in this one. I can't remember, but and then talked about the science behind them. And so they read like the Red Mars series and talked about colonization and
this is for undergraduate.
Undergraduate freshmen.
Like freshmen, okay.
Yeah, probably. Actually, yeah, first year seminar. So I know a lot of schools have a first year seminar course. It's a little bit beyond, you know, it's a little unusual. I did one on utopian literature when I was in college. It's you know,
good. Gives you the chance to look at those unusual topics.
Yeah, and so they did. And I was a TA for one that was literally all about rockets and dinosaurs. Like, we did dinosaurs and then we did rockets. Like, there was no overarching theme except for like things kids like.
Okay.
About science. It was the coolest thing. So I was a TA for that. But anyway, so this would be just as cool. It was science and science fiction. You could have them read a book for that. You can pick out your, you know, particular episodes of Star Trek or Babylon 5 or Stargate. I can think of a Stargate episode I would show for black hole physics right off the top of my head.
Were they doing movies and TV as well? Or
I don't know how much they did movies and TV. I know they definitely did books. It was I think it was a literature professor and an astronomer. But you can add those clips in, and you can add those in as extras if you don't want them. If you can't have them reading all, you know, on every subject you touch. You can have some viewers, some. I have to remember this. I think I'm going to be involved in the sci-fi club here at SIUE next semester, so I need to remember this.
That's a great. I mean, that's a great idea to do, and you can do that at many levels. Many levels.
Yeah.
education. So.
And you team up with an English professor, and
Mm-hmm.
you're just good to go. So I love that idea. There was another one I don't remember the link of, but there is a gentleman who's starting. He went looking around for open source astronomy textbooks and didn't find one he liked, and so he is starting one. And it's sort of being built as a wiki, but not, in that it'll be frozen every semester so that the textbook doesn't change mid-semester on people. But it'll be an open source astronomy textbook. He's been inviting people to be writers and editors. I have the card somewhere. I'll have to add that into the show notes later.
Okay.
Looking for people to write or edit on their particular area of expertise. And so I think I signed on to help out with the astrobiology chapter.
Oh, excellent.
Because I taught that class before.
Excellent.
So hopefully that will be a good resource, because I know, again, we do our online classes through CosmoQuest, and so we don't want to ask people to buy a book for a 4-week online class. It's expensive.
Yeah.
But you can have people use that as a reference, and it'll be sourced from people all over the field.
Yep.
So that's pretty cool. Oh gosh, what else did I run into? I can't think of. There was a couple more teacher professional development type things. One of them is the NASA. I'll just put the link in there. It's called NITARP. But these are these professional development opportunities that teachers could on if they want to get more space science in the classroom. And in particular, they were evaluating some of the results they had from their professional development. There was another, there was a researcher I talked to who had a certain way of teaching girls in elementary school using spatial, that improved their spatial reasoning skills. So there was different, she had teachers trying different ways of teaching. I can't remember the specifics again. I have the picture somewhere, of not just splitting girls and boys, but also they were doing demographics by race as well. And so there was a certain way of teaching spatial concepts using these 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional models that were really helpful for girls, and especially girls, minority girls. And so that was really cool. So seeing this in the classroom research was pretty exciting as well.
Yeah, that's the really cool thing about, I don't know, especially, I like the poster sessions, just because you just see such a variety of different projects.
Yeah.
You can take a look and see, their results, and it's not, you can take as much time as you want, and usually you can talk to the people.
Right.
And you just get a nice variety of, things that people are trying sometimes in the classroom like this, and come away with some really good ideas.
Now I have the list open and I'm going to find it. Gosh darn it. Okay. Jeffrey Burks was the
younger
one.
Kids too. This was with
What's
the
that?
girls.
No, the one that was the open source introduction to astronomy textbook was Jeffrey Burks.
Okay.
From, I don't know if it has, from Tennessee State. And I'll just link to all these abstracts. There's the freshman year seminar. There's my poster. I found it. Marin Cole. I think that's who it was. University of Kentucky. This was actually specifically they were observing the moon and doing spatial science reasoning, of course. Oh, and Jennifer Willem. Sorry, that's the other one that was spatial reasoning. Using different, so Jennifer Willem of University of Kentucky as well, doing different types of spatial reasoning activities with girls. So I will link to these, to the abstracts. I'm pretty sure these are all available without signing in, but that may not be true. But I will find them. They at least have to be on ADS. I will find them. So a lot of interesting stuff being done in the classroom, in the college level, at elementary school level, and so that's always pretty fun.
Yeah.
And I know we're in for more at Astronomical Society of the Pacific in July in San Jose.
July, yeah.
So we're, between the two of us, we're giving like 4 presentations.
Could be, yeah. That's a great one that's a much more education focused than AAS, although I think AAS is, their education portion is growing. or has been growing at least.
Yeah, yeah.
But ASP is definitely focused on education and public outreach,
Right.
at all levels. So that's an exciting one, a fun one to go to.
Yep. Yeah,
So
I'm excited
yeah,
because I went last year and I was new to this, so I didn't really have anything to present. I was just kind of watching. So this time having a couple posters and presentations to do will be good.
yeah, yeah.
In San Jose. So yeah, you know what I'll do is
San Jose.
I'll write a blog post on these interesting abstracts that I have found and talk to the people for, because there's a couple of others. I don't want to get too wordy with them without having something cool to show. So I will do that. My list of blog posts to write. There were some other interesting things going on at AAS. Starting at the last January one, they're working on, since they have, a few hundred to a few thousand astronomers in one place, why not bring in school kids, right? And unleash them. Actually, it's way more organized than that. They've done an amazing job. So basically, one day, during lunchtime, when there's very few astronomers wandering the exhibit hall, they'll bring in a group of school children, several hundred school children. And you see the confused looks of the astronomers going, why are all these little kids here? They did middle school and high school students in January. So I participated in that one and did making craters, and I showed them CosmoQuest on the big NASA wall. This time I wasn't directly involved, although I did help stuff their goodie bags full of swag from us and from other organizations that brought their stuff last minute.
That's important. That's very important.
Give them the swag, but my friend...
free stuff.
Yeah, my friend Gail Zazowski gave a talk. This was mostly middle schoolers this time, so a younger group. They asked the most amazing questions. Gail was just like, wow, that was a good question, to every single question. They were asking, because she was talking about the Milky Way, and she studies she maps out the distribution of dust in the Milky Way, and so they were asking really detailed, insightful questions about galaxy structure and morphology and evolution, which was really exciting to see. So they had that, and then they broke off into groups and went around to different stations. I have a picture of a group at the National Radio Astronomy Observatory station, of course, because I love those guys. Because, I was their grad student for many years. So you've got all these kids sitting on the floor, and he's answering questions, and they have a video showing a radio image of Cassiopeia A.
Nice.
And like I said, they got freebies from all the organizations as well. Posters, like they may have actually given them the poster that's behind me, the Cygnus A.
Yes, one of them is using the poster as a telescope.
Yes, they are. Yeah, I think I think they got that poster back there. It's Hercules A in radio, one of my favorites. So they went around. There was a couple of the optics people had little things to show them. Some had movies, some had demos. I know Chandra does this universe in a bottle thing with jelly beans and
yes, with the jelly beans. I've seen that. That's
the color of the jelly bean corresponds to like what it is, if it's like dark matter, dark energy, or regular matter, right? Baryonic matter. And so you've got all these black jelly beans, which are the licorice ones, which are my mother's favorite. I feel like I need to give her this. Last year they had a pulsar, which is like a little red LED, like in a ball of clay on string, and you spin it, and you get, and so it looks like a pulsar.
I think I've seen that.
Yeah, I want to make one. So they have some really good activities for. I don't know how the schools actually sign up to be a part of it, but I can find out when the January one gets closer. The January one is going to be in the DC area. It's going to be in a resort type thing in Maryland, so not downtown like it usually is. It's a little further out, but.
And that's just an hour. Did you say that they opened?
That was a few. I want to say it was an hour. No, it was more than an hour. I think it was more like 2 hours.
Okay.
And they have, I forget, maybe 10, 15 minutes at each station. They ring a bell, and they all switch. It's very well. I mean, to have several hundred kids in that conference center, it was very well coordinated.
That's great.
They have a system, and they have a system.
So it's not mass chaos.
It's not mass chaos.
Okay.
That many kids. My friend Gail was like nervous going up there. She's like, I'm really nervous. I'm like, Gail, we've worked with elementary school kids all through grad school. She's like, yeah, but we had like no more than 10 or 15 at a time. There's 200 in front of me. Yeah, they'll behave. It's fine.
So they had teachers and parents, I'm assuming,
Yeah,
along.
they brought each group had a chaperone that was either a teacher or a parent as well. So they got freebies too.
Yeah, I was gonna say, good thing.
They get the freebies, they get the demos. They did edible astronomy with one group, which I am stealing some of those activities, or some of those
Yes.
activities I've already done anyway. Um,
Yeah. So what were they eating?
they made
A
I love
preview.
this. They made an active galactic nucleus, right, out of a bagel.
A
So the
bagel? Okay.
bagel is the torus, right? and there's ice cream cones that stick out the other each end, which are the jets, or then there's Twizzlers involved. I don't know. It's not the kind of stuff you'd all want to eat together, but it makes a pretty
Oh,
convincing
I don't know, maybe.
physical
Doesn't
combination.
sound that bad.
I don't
Doesn't sound that bad.
Twizzlers bagel and ice cream cone. I don't know how I feel about
Oh,
that.
hey, try it. Yeah.
I will try any food once. So as long
So
as it
that
doesn't
could
have a
be
high
delicious.
probability of killing me, I'll try any food once. Say that on record. Um, and something else they did, I heard about this from Rick Feinberg. So I packed up my telescope and put it in my car for the star party. So they actually did a star party from downtown Indianapolis.
Mm-hmm.
I was a little worried how this was going to work out, but since there was no moon and Saturn was up at so this is they were just setting up. They had a whole bunch of people from the Amateur Society in Indianapolis.
Great.
And so this particular telescope is completely handmade. This
Nice
wooden
looking
guy there.
scopes. Yes.
There's some huge and oh my god! So I met this guy, Mike. I can't remember his last name. So hi, but I know his Twitter handle because he recognized my Twitter handle. And by the end of the night, most people had come by, had left, and so we were goofing around and looking at as many Messier objects as we could from downtown Indianapolis. It was like, it's a fuzzy smudge, it's another fuzzy smudge. But really, Saturn was the main attraction. And so we had all these telescopes with different views of Saturn. You can see many of its moons through some of the bigger ones. I had my little ETX 90 out there, which Tim, my boyfriend, was able to run for me while I ran around handing out handouts. There were, lots of people coming from the restaurants. There were kids who were graduating high school. Their graduation was actually in the convention center, so they got pulled aside to look through the telescopes and look at Saturn. So I don't know what the numbers are. They reached quite a few people with Saturn, and
Yeah, Saturn never disappoints.
yeah, it
It's
was
always
amazing.
great.
And then we got a really spectacular ISS pass as well.
Oh, bonus. All right.
Yeah, it was it was great. So somebody had been tracking on one of their apps on their phones. I guess I should plug. I use ISS Tracker on my Android phone, but there are lots and lots of these. Heavensabove.com, of course, is like a great website for this.
I know. I was gonna say that's where I go.
Yeah. I don't know if they have an app though, or if that's the app that feeds all the others.
I have no idea. I don't know.
And so, yeah, we all ran to the back of that field there because it would be behind a building. So we had to run to the back of the field so we could see it above the building. We're like, whoa, cool. And then someone goes, I'm going to get my telescope. Runs back to the telescope. And a couple of people got to see it flash through. But you really, if you're trying to track it, binoculars work better than a telescope.
I would think so.
People say it does look like a little TIE fighter.
Oh, really? Hopefully
yeah, you can actually resolve details if you're tracking it well with binoculars. And so that was pretty cool. And like I said, people were coming by, stopping by, seeing Saturn, and then actually talking with the local astronomers there, just with all their equipment and all the stuff that they were seeing.
I know. Yay, astronomy clubs.
Yay! And there was
they're so good with that.
Yes. Yep. And there was actually a few special sessions. Specifically geared towards amateur astronomers, and they were able to purchase a day pass or a 2-day pass to go to those talks and to the rest of the meeting as well. So for the first time, AAS was open to people who are non-members, not needing us, because usually you can only go as a non-member if you're sponsored by a member. So that's for student, my first time when I went as a student, I was sponsored by my advisor. Yeah. So it was actually open to non-members.
And they could go to the rest of the meeting?
And they could go to the rest of the meeting, too.
Is that the first time they've done that?
I think that was the first time they've done that. Yeah, I think I saw a press release about that being the first time. So some of the talks were geared to that audience specifically, because the rest of them, you walk in, if you're not actively working in that field, those 5-minute talks are going to blow right by you. But
I know.
The hour-long plenary sessions are really interesting
Yeah.
and geared towards, people with a general knowledge. And of course, you can walk around the poster room and talk to the posters and the exhibitors and all that fun stuff.
Yeah. No, it's a lot of it's overwhelming, and it was totally over my head, like you say, because there's a lot of just amazing stuff there. But yeah, the education stuff and the posters are great. And so, and I know there was probably some workshops before the meeting.
Yes, Center for Astronomy Education did a workshop.
But I was going to say, right, but
that's the only one I actually saw. It was light on workshops. In January, they'll be doing a bunch more. They usually do. I know last year they did early career development workshops for postdocs and like me. There's an astronomy ambassadors program that they're doing it's trying to get early career scientists, so undergrads, grad students, postdocs, young professors, to become more comfortable with outreach. And so I might apply for that. I said, am I gonna, is it for people who are new to outreach? Are they gonna say we can't accept you because you know some of this already? I don't know. So, but I think there's still a lot to learn and a lot to do, and they're building a community of people who can talk about science, who are scientists.
Yeah, I would think so. Right.
So I'll apply. We'll
communication about science is also really important. Yeah.
So the Astronomy Ambassadors workshop is usually before the meeting as well. They do data workshops now. They do how to handle big data sets, and of course now since last January there was a hack day. If you're at AAS, and it's the hacker mentality of get together for a day and just do a project. just sit down and do a project. I did the video. I usually do some kind of video project because I'm not so good with the fast coding. That'll be coming up in January as well. So yeah, AAS 223. It'll be in the DC area in January. That's the big meeting. So there'll be a lot more going on.
Yeah, excellent. So yeah, and so you have probably some abstracts planned, I'm assuming, for that, or you're not thinking that far ahead yet.
We just put in the last ASP one.
I know.
Oh, we'll get there. I think DragonCon is the next major thing.
Oh yeah, that. Yeah, that'll happen first.
Yeah. Michael Jobin commented, I hope you make a pulsar with an adjustable pole orientation. And because it's made of clay, I assume it's not that hard to do, right? Because if it's on a string, right? If it's on a string. So the magnetic pole is the LED pole, right? And the rotational pole is the string it's on. You can pull the string out and pull it through another way, and move it around as well. So
sounds like something we have to try, and sounds like something maybe you could show a little demo of.
Yes.
In a future episode. I don't know.
For a future episode, we will make a pulsar.
Worth a try. Why not? Yeah.
Sounds good. Yeah. All right, so that's all I had for my AAS update.
Update.
I will follow up with a blog post on cosmoquest.org/blog that will link to some of these abstracts that I talked about. They should be in ADS, so I'll pull at least the abstracts out, and that way you can get more information for some of these projects, because it's a lot of good stuff, and I'm happy to share beyond the meeting.
Yes, all about sharing.
Yeah,
Very
sharing's caring. So next week, we are going to be busy with our Teach Professional Development. We have 6 teachers coming in to the Edwardsville area to learn Terra Luna and actually get a really in-depth hands-on experience using the Terra Luna curriculum in the classroom. So this is the middle school Earth Science Lunar Geology unit that you guys have created. So that's
we'll be doing a lot of fun activities and looking at moon mappers as well. So
yes, we'll be doing moon mappers. So
online citizen science in there too.
Yeah, so we will probably not have a regular episode, but I will do a short update from the workshop, because as we did with NSTA, there's some fun video and pictures you can get out of having teachers make craters. So as long as they're willing to sign a waiver, I will be sharing those. If they don't, I still have video from NSTA. Those teachers were
that out. Yes,
we could dig that out. They were really fun. Yeah. There was flour everywhere.
Yes.
So that's next week,
Sounds
and
good.
then 2 weeks from now, I think we're gonna have the Mad Art Lab people. We're gonna have a full hangout, full of science geeky artists who blog at Mad Art Lab. And if you have not checked out their blog, and you should, because they just do amazing stuff. They create amazing stuff. They're geeky and fun and sciency, and so we'll be having them on the show in 2 weeks. Otherwise, we've got Weekly Space Hangout on Friday. Saturday and Sunday will be the Hangout-a-thon.
Yeah.
Pamela and I will be hosting that, and there'll be a virtual star party on Sunday after that as well, and then Astronomy cast on Monday, assuming Pamela's still alive.
Still right.
After
Up and running. Yeah.
awake with me all weekend. So,
Yeah, so hangouts for everybody.
Hangouts for everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for watching and joining, and commenting and sharing. We really do appreciate that. So thanks a lot, and we'll see you next week if we don't already see you this weekend.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, everybody. Goodbye.
Hey, but like you said, the concepts and practices that you learn in that class are going to extend to your thinking of things like global climate change, or even economic difficulties that we're having. It's all numbers, it's math. So that's one kind of important place that can go as well.
Yeah.
And we also brought up the question. This is something we've dabbled a little bit with online classes at CosmoQuest, but there's a big push in general towards online learning, and also these huge, the MOOCs, right? The massively online, open online course.
Massive open online course.
Am I getting that right? MOOC, M-O-O-C. I can't remember.
M-O-O-C.
Yes. So that's a whole new field, and we're not sure what the best practices are for that either. And that's something I hear from people who've taken those classes. They like building. They have little coffee shop communities that get together and talk about the lectures. I mean, you still want a face-to-face component with that as well. So
yeah, well, you're right. Those are new and exciting, and it's still sort of up for grabs as to how effective they are, and how much learning goes on, and how easy or difficult it is for people to access them, because that's the big deal with them is that supposedly people who are far away from universities or can't afford to go to universities can still get a university quality course in whatever is available, and there's still a lot of debate about that, but they are put a cushion under him. He'll be just fine.
Just get a few. Do they even make phone books anymore?
I think unfortunately they do. I think they still do. But
they still do. Just a lot of phone books. We drove the 3 hours to, let me see if I can screen share this, to
road
Indianapolis for a little road trip. So this is actually Captain Chuck.
And who else?
This is Plushy Will Wheaton. They were strapped into the passenger seat of my car.
I'm sure they got along just fine together.
They did. They really did. They're good traveling buddies.
Kind of bonded. Yeah.
So we went to AAS222. If you're looking at all these hashtags and wondering what the heck that was about, that was coming from that conference. A whole bunch of science news stories that I'm sure you've been keeping up on. Lots of Kepler news. Lots of news coming out of ALMA, the Atacama Large Millimeter Array. But I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the education results and ideas and presentations and things that were talked about at the meeting. I want to remind you guys watching, first of all, if you can share this, that would be great. I failed to invite all the people I usually invite, so if you can share that link out, that would be cool. And you can comment along with us as well. If you're watching on YouTube, you can comment there. If you're watching on Google Plus, on the event page, we're picking those up. And anywhere else on Google Plus as is posted, I should have captured as well. If you use the hashtag Learning Space on Twitter, welcome to this week's Learning Space with Captain Chuck.
Yes,
apparently,
Captain Chuck.
I officially got the story of Chuck. So Chuck is actually a My Moon mascot. So that's a JPL outreach project about lunar science. And it's actually one of the guys who works there, who you and I both know, who has a Chuck costume.
Yeah, I was going to say,
It's
much larger than our Chuck, right?
yes, but it actually started
Yeah,
as
sure.
whoever was developing the website just happened to put a squirrel as an icon. They thought it was funny, and they kind of ran away with it. So yeah, and that's why we have our own little Captain Chuck, in solidarity with the My Moon people. But also, yes, this is Learning Space. I'm a little bit rambly today. I'm Nicole Gugliucci. I am postdoc with CosmoQuest. We are in the throes of prepping for our 24-hour Hangout-a-thon that is happening this weekend, starting at 11 a.m. Central. And with me is Georgia Bracey.
Hello.
So Georgia Bracey is in charge of CosmoQuest education. And I have Chuck here with me today because he and I were in Indianapolis last week. And we were at the American Astronomical Society meeting. It was one of the smaller meetings. Usually the spring meetings are a bit smaller. But it was a fairly short drive for us. In fact, I have a picture of Chuck. Oh, I don't have it open.
Is he driving?
Well, no,
I don't know if he's old enough.
I have trouble seeing over the steering wheel. And he's far shorter than I are following that too. So maybe we should just all of the things.
All those places.
So maybe we should just jump right into it.
Hey, you didn't see a life-size Will Wheaton walking around.
Wish, that would be awesome. No, I did not, sadly.
Okay.
I have seen a life-size Will Wheaton walking around Dragon Con, though. But sadly not.
That would be the place, yeah.
Not at a AAS meeting. So.
Well, maybe in the future.
Nor was there a large squirrel, just the little guy.
Okay. Aw.
Yeah. So there was a bunch of, actually there was one of the big education sessions was on Monday, so the first day of the conference, and it was called Astronomy Education, Where Are We Now and Where Are We Going? And so there were a series of 15-minute talks, which is much longer than the usual 5 minutes that people get at a AAS meeting, which was kind of nice, actually, to give people a little bit more time to flesh out their ideas. So first there was a talk by Ed Prather of the Center for Astronomy Education. I've taken one of their workshops before I was actually teaching astronomy in college, and so that helped me out quite a bit. It's especially useful if you're teaching large lectures. They give you some really great ideas on how to get participation from your students, even when you're teaching in like a theater.
Make it more interactive.
Yeah.
And student-centered, yes, even in the huge group.
Yeah. And this, and since the question was where are we going from here, that group in particular has done a lot of research into how you can change the Astronomy 101 classroom, because for a lot of people, and this may be true for some of you guys watching, that was the last formal science education that a lot of people get. You know, you get to college, you got to take 1 or 2 science courses if you're not a science major, and people tend towards astronomy because it's cool. And so so that is a way for us as educators to do public outreach on a broad scale before these people go on to become politicians or lawyers or, something not sciencey, but something
making
somewhere else in society.
Decisions about how things are run and what happens in your world. So it's actually kind of a scary thing when you think about it, and it makes you realize how important those intro and general courses are, because it's all the citizens out there. It may be their only chance to not only see some of the new content and discoveries in science, but kind of get a feel for how it works. So if you're letting them in on, the processes of science, how science is done, that could be the only time they see that. So it's really important.
Yeah. One of the issues in particular he talked about, as far as where can we go from this, is tying science and society and tying attitudes about science into that educational research as well, seeing how science is important to real world problems, right? So astronomy may generally deal with things that are big and far away,